coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve, guys. What a insane week one we just had here. Lots of up and downs, lots of amazing but heartbreaks all around. Oh, man, what a week one it was. But we are back, guys, after a long weekend, obviously. We're here to talk about some waiver wire pickups. We're going to talk about the weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun today. No Coach Gibbs today. I'm not really sure where Coach Gibbs is. He's MIA today, but I'm sure he's fine. But, of course, we have Coach John on the show. John, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much. Another beautiful Monday. This is a Monday unlike any other that we've had in a while. We now have legitimate NFL scores to break down, players to pick up, waiver acquisitions to try and target. So the grind of the fantasy season begins. And so here we are, one weekend, and we're already dealing with injuries.
Yes, we are, and we will talk about that in a second. Like I said, we have news to talk about. There's injuries in the news, obviously. We're going to talk about some maybe just overall something that we looked at from the weekend, something we were like, whoa, or whatever. And then we're going to get into position by position, waiver wire breakdowns, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight ends for the week here. So we're going to start with the news as always. And, of course, the biggest news of the weekend was J.K. Dobbins, Ravens running back, torn Achilles, out for the season once again. Very, very ashamed. This man has barely played 2 full seasons overall in his 4-year career now, but it is official. He is out for the year. Melvin Gordon gets called up from the practice squad. Now we're left with the items, so the names of Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, and obviously Melvin Gordon now. So, John, I'm sure we're going to talk about these running backs in a second, but how devastating is not having J.K. Dobbins for you?
Totally stinks, because I was one of the ones who was definitely scooping up J.K. Dobbins as some draft value. Obviously you never want to see an injury happen this early in the season, but it's a risk that comes with every player. It just sucks because poor J.K., like you said, just can't ever seem to get a full season under his belt. So torn Achilles. The problem is now, if we're talking about J.K. Dobbins in a vacuum in like a dynasty format, it's going to be a really uphill battle for J.K. Dobbins at this point to get back to being a full workhorse, being a legitimate player. Achilles is a death sentence for running backs, or it was 5-6 years ago. We've seen some players come back from it, but it's not great. It's sad to see. Totally sucks. But yeah, we'll talk about what we're going to do with the Ravens backfield going forward.
Absolutely. Yes, we will. A couple of the news things that we're still waiting to hear about if they're going to really impact us. Tyler Lockett, possible concussion from this weekend here. It's unknown whether or not he's going to miss any time. Deontay Johnson has a pretty serious or moderate serious hamstring injury here that he left the game. I think in the middle of the second quarter, the Pittsburgh 49ers game. He could miss some time. But again, there are some players we might talk about for his replacement if that were to come about. Jacoby Myers, he got a pretty serious hit on him. He is in the concussion protocol. It's unknown if he is going to be ready for week 2. But I mean, he was a big breakout for week 1. Obviously, huge. And obviously, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce did not play in week 1. We're hoping that they're back in week 2, obviously. Cooper Kupp is on the IR, out 4 games now because we didn't get official word on that on Thursday when we were talking about him. Again, there will be some replacements that we will talk about in just a few here on Cooper Kupp. And then just keep your eyes out. Anthony Richardson, bruised. He got his knee a little banged up at the end of the game last week. Aaron Jones pulled his hammy. Pat Freiermuth had something to do with his chest injury in the game there. So there's some things that just keep in mind. Again, we are in injury season now, guys. Players are going to get hurt, so we have to make adjustments for them. So let's talk about week 1 real quick. John, what was the biggest thing from week 1 or something that really stood out for you that you want to bring up for week 1?
Well, I'll do two, one specific one, and then one kind of overarching theme that I noticed. One thing that was a big takeaway from me is the 49ers and Brock Purdy are legit. Like, they're just so good. They're so good. It's so annoying that, Shanahan can just plug anybody back there and score 40 points. It's, they have so many weapons. It's just the 49ers are legit. And there was questions of Brock Purdy, if he's going to come back after this injury and be, come crashing back to earth. And the answer is no. He has Kyle Shanahan and some of the best weapons in the NFL, so they're going to continue to look really, really good. So 49ers were a great one for me. I liked seeing there a ton of success out of there. And then the other overarching takeaway I want to say, and this was just a kind of a bigger conversation that I've noticed over the past few years, as we take workload off of these players in the preseason, and as we do less preseason games and starters don't play nearly as much, week 1 and week 2, it's a lot of sloppy football. It's a lot of sloppy football. Like, a lot of the games, timing was off. Routes didn't look crisp. You getting lazy penalties. It was like, so, I just think we have to, as fantasy managers, it's something I've noticed over the past couple of years of playing fantasy. We have to take that into consideration when we're looking at week 1 and week 2 performances. Is a lot of these guys don't really get a full preseason like they used to anymore. So we might need to be, a little bit more patient in week 1 and week 2 with some of our breakout players and some of these guys that we had high hopes on.
I like it. Let's see. Burpee needs 18.75 combined points from Diggs and Garrett Wilson. You should be pretty good. Hopefully it's PPR or some half point at least. You should be pretty good.
Yeah, that feels good. That feels
10
good.
10 and 9 points from both these guys. It seems pretty legit from happening. So, yeah, my biggest takeaway from the weekend is obviously don't overreact. Everyone likes to overreact to players going nuts and like, oh my gosh, stars are performing. Some breakout players just come out of nowhere. We have it every year, guys. Some players come out of nowhere and just put up points that you would never expect that to happen. And vice versa. Star players just don't look good. Things look terrible there. A big situation is the Bengals. It definitely was a concern to see them play as poor as they did. But again, they didn't have that, like John, you mentioned, they didn't have that preseason to really practice and really get that tempo together, even though they've been playing for a while together. Joe Burrow didn't look himself yet. It might take a game or two for him to really start getting back up. Again, he had that injury here, but definitely was a major scare for a lot of fantasy owners. I think maybe Drake London could be a major issue overall. Him having 0 targets in a game where the Falcons actually won, showing that they don't really need Drake London to help perform, to actually help them win games. I'm more concerned about him than I'm concerned about, like a guy like T. Higgins with 0 points, but he had 8 targets. So again, don't overreact to things. At this point, if you're looking to cut people, you're cutting people that you took late in your draft that you were like, let me take a shot on. And if they didn't pan out, okay, kind of cutting those guys at this point, because it's I'm trying to think of a name that really was someone that we were drafting really late. Like one of the Giants receivers, like, yeah, they didn't have the greatest game. Things just got out of whack there. But if, none of them really shined in a very hard position to shine, you could probably drop them and look to get one of these waiver wire pickups here. But, don't, like the guys you drafted in round 10 to 12, those like upside plays, don't get rid of them yet. Give them a few more weeks before you go. The rookies, if you drafted a rookie, hold on.
Absolutely.
A little longer, because we've seen it year after year, right, John? Like Justin Jefferson, do not drop him. Boom, he goes out and has one of the best rookie seasons of all time after week 4.
Yeah, he didn't have a target in this first week. Justin Jefferson, I don't even think he had a lot of snaps his first week in the league. And then by week 2, I think he had a couple targets. And then week 3 on, it was just, forget it. He's Justin Jefferson. Exactly. So, yeah, it takes a second for some of these guys. It just takes a second.
But that's why we're here now. We hopefully helped you guys win your week 1. And now we're here to start with helping you win week 2. And the very important thing are waiver wire pickups. Where the players that you can pick up to help your team out if you're looking for some depth pieces or potential starter. So we're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. We're going to give you guys our top 2 or top 5 from each position. And at the very end, we'll give you guys an overall top 5 overall to pick up for week 2. All right, so we'll start from the top here at quarterbacks. Again, no Coach Gibbs today. I didn't realize it before I made the slide, so just me and Coach John here. Obviously, the percentages are based on the ownership availability. Some of them are in terms of fantasy pro, some of them are in terms of sleeper. So, John, I'll let you go first with your 2 players there. I see you have Clayton Tune and Baker Mayfield. So,
yeah. Baker Mayfield was one. I'll start with him. He was one for me that I was kind of getting interested in towards the end of the draft season, as we were getting there. We talked about it a couple episodes ago about some late target super flex guys, and Baker Mayfield to me in camp, press was coming out good. Evans was healthy. Godwin was healthy. All the pieces kind of set up there for Baker to look good, and he did. He came out, played well, looked impressive. Baker, the problem is, I think the stink of Baker is worse than he actually is. People are tired of like his theatrics and all that about him, but at the end of the day, Baker can still distribute the ball. And if he's going to have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, Sean Tucker looked good out of the backfield. I mean, there's enough complementary pieces around him that he could be a serviceable low-end quarterback too going forward, as far as I'm concerned, with a couple spike weeks, Evans takes a bomb to the house. Godwin takes a slant to the house, So I think Baker Mayfield now, after this week, all I needed to see was 1 week, and I'm totally comfortable kind of riding him rest of season as a quarterback too.
Yeah. I like that a lot there because obviously, as you see, I have Baker in mine too. So I do.
Mm-hmm. And then Clayton Tune, this is another one. I didn't know kind of how I wanted to play this, but I think – at this point, when you're picking up quarterbacks off waiver wire, I'm assuming you're probably in a super flex or a 2 quarterback format. If you're in a 1 quarterback, you probably have better options than this. But if you are in a 2 quarterback format, go do a $0 fab bid on Clayton Tune. There is not a very long leash for Josh Dobbs. He looked terrible. They brought him in 2 weeks before the season opener. I don't know what's going on in Arizona, but I think at some point they have to look to the future and say, okay, well, maybe let's just see what's going on with this rookie, I guess. Like, I don't 100% know what's going on in Arizona, but I can make the assumption that if Josh Dobbs goes out and has another 3-4 turnover game, 0 touchdowns, like 100 yards, like they're just going to pull the plug on that quick. So I would stash Clayton Tune with just the chance that maybe he gets the start and is not terrible, but again, this is deeper 2 quarterback super flex formats. If you're in single format, quarterback format, don't even look at Clayton Tune. Don't even bother.
Yeah, no, it's hard with in terms of free agencies with like super flex league because 9 times out of 10, none of these guys are going to be there obviously, but a Clayton Tune might be there. It's really hard to find waiver wire quarterbacks in super flex league, so. Definitely one that could be eventually be a starter for us at some point if Kyle Murray is not back. But for those 1 QBers, obviously Jordan Love for me is probably my biggest pickup in terms of any of these quarterbacks. I wanted to see it on the field before I could believe it, and he looked good. There was definitely some things he could work on to get a little bit better. The fact that he didn't have his top wide receiver definitely showed me some interest in him, obviously, and obviously he's not going to be available for everyone, but there's a good chance that he's available in your league. And if you're, looking for a quarterback, or maybe you only drafted like a Geno Smith type or something like that, or Daniel Jones type, and you want to have a insurance plan, Jordan Love should definitely be on your roster at this point there because he's got a pretty easy schedule. He's got Chicago, he's got Atlanta this week. Again, not the greatest defense in terms of the passing. So definitely something that Jordan Love should be picked up. Like you, John, Baker Mayfield. Like I said, I like the weapons. The weapons were there for him to perform, but it was depending on can he perform with those weapons. And he did enough. It wasn't great. But again, if you're streaming quarterbacks and you're looking for matchups, they're playing the Bears. Jordan Love just destroyed the Bears. So, giving Baker Mayfield a chance with better weapons than Jordan Love has. I like that if you're streaming quarterbacks this week. Other options, obviously, Derek Carr. He didn't look pretty, but he threw up 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill had a terrible week, but they played the Chargers this week too. Just threw almost 500 yards on them. Got to give him a chance on that. The rebound, Mac Jones did very good against the Eagles defense. Now they're playing a Dolphins team that allowed, this Chargers to go nuts on them. So I don't like them options at the end there, but if you're streaming quarterbacks and you're looking for a chance and upside play, well, maybe one of those guys can end up having a game. So again, quarterbacks this week, not so great, but overall, we're not really worried about quarterbacks. But if you're looking for one, there's definitely some options out there. So
I would like to say before we move on too, I think Jordan Love going forward, even in single quarterback format, has a lot of value and upside. What he showed us without Christian Watson, I was pumping him up in the sleeper show on Thursday, and I kind of got hesitant because Watson was out. But I think Jordan Love being in the Packers organization for the past 4 years, to me, says enough that they know he's going to be good. And so I think he's just going to be good. I just really do. They're obviously, Green Bay's good at developing and drafting quarterbacks. They went from Brett Favre to, Aaron Rodgers. And so I really do believe, I'm starting to really, really believe in Jordan. I kind of believed in him. I really believe in Jordan Love now.
Well, that's how you develop a quarterback. That's how the right way you probably should develop a quarterback.
Listen,
let him sit for a few years, learn the system, and then throw him out there. So you don't get as long with him, but you get a good quarterback compared to what we've been seeing the last few years on some of these guys. So. All right. Over to the running backs. This is probably obviously really juicy because we all need running backs. Who doesn't need a good running back here? So, John, if you want to go through yours, I think we have basically the same top four besides our fifth one. So if you want to start with Karen Williams, then I'll kind of go back and forth with you. So,
so Karen Williams, again, this is another one. This was the little bit of fear that I think everyone sort of washed away when talking about Cam Akers this offseason, is that, he's back. He's the workhorse. The whole relationship with them has been patched. And it's like, yeah, maybe. I bought in. I believed it. And then come week one, we're seeing other backs get involved. We're seeing other backs get, targets in the red zone, all these different things. And so I think that the idea that Cam Akers is just going to be this locked and loaded, 80%, snap count back is kind of up in air. And so I will take the gamble that Kyren Williams carves out a little bit of role and, without Cooper Kupp and but without Cooper Kupp and all things going forward and rest of season, that Kyren Williams will have a share of this backfield. And again, I don't think the Rams are going to be the most prolific offense in the world, but Sean McVay is one of the smarter minds. And so he can optimize even a bad offense. So I'll take the chance, Kyren Williams, obviously.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he's my number one pickup in terms of running backs this week. 65-35 split in terms of snap count with him and Cam Akers. He led the goal line work. He led the third down work. He even led the early down work. Like we thought, all right, he's going to have the passing down work. That was pretty self-explanatory, but Cam Akers taking the early downs. No. Karen Williams had the early downs too. He beat him in the early down work. So it was just like, okay, that's interesting. Now, again, they need weapons on this team here. It just continues to show us that Cam Akers, they don't want to continuously trust him with the ball in his hands here. Williams was a guy I did like. I don't know if he has the ability to actually perform on a three down back. It's definitely going to be somewhat of a slip, but it might favor Williams moving forward here. Again, I don't know how much you're spending in terms of fab, John, but I think I'd probably go as high as like 35-40%, honestly, because you never know what's going to happen here. And if he ends up continuing to be the main guy here, I think 30%, 35% is a safe bet.
Yeah, I am in that camp where in the first couple weeks, I'm okay overbidding on someone because you're going to get them for the whole season versus week 8. Like what's the point of hanging on to all your budget and blowing it in week 10? It's like you get a guy for 4 weeks, whereas I'd rather blow budget now and hopefully get a guy for the whole season. So if I'm going to overpay, it's usually in week 1 or week 2, and I'm okay with 30%, 30% of my budget on Kyren Williams or the next guy we're going to talk about, Gus Edwards. I'm okay with that level of, because you're probably going to get a low-end RB2 with some upside for the rest of the year, and that's pretty helpful. That's really helpful, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I want him to see more targets that will really make me trust him, and probably more like 25, honestly. If I'm going to a number, it's really like 25. But I still believe that there's a good chance for him to carve out the RB1. If you want to go higher, if you're looking for that RB to maybe flex every week, he might end up being that guy. So I don't know. Again, you didn't give me an order, but who's your second?
I know.
Was he your first guy? I don't know. Was he your first?
Yeah, Kyren Williams was actually my first. You have it in pretty much the order I would put it in. So
all right. So go through Gus Edwards.
So thank you. Yeah, this is actually exactly
number
the order.
2. So
yeah, so Gus is my number 2. I liked Gus Edwards again in the whole draft process because I did think that he's a good running back. He is very efficient, even though he's not flashy. And I do think that the Baltimore Ravens like him. And, I didn't expect J.K. Dobbins to go down with a terrible injury week 1, but, there was always the risk that he was going to go down and Gus was going to get, obviously the lion's share of the work there. So the fear is obviously you have Lamar Jackson is going to vulture touchdowns from you. But if you're going to give Gus Edwards 15 to 18 touches a game in a Baltimore Ravens offense that I think is only going to get better with time, I'm okay with that. And so I think that that's kind of where you're locked in with Gus Edwards. It's not going to be these crazy explosive runs. It's not going to be these huge plays, but it's going to be solid, consistent volume week in, week out with touchdown upside. Think of like a David Montgomery kind of in that ballpark. Yeah. So I'm okay again with Gus Edwards rest of season. If you are struggling at running back, if your guys didn't really, if you're dealing with the Alvin Kamara suspension or whatever, right. And you need someone to just plug in and get you points for a few weeks until guys come back from injury or whatever else. I think Gus Edwards is going to be great. I really do. I don't think we'll talk about Justice Hill when we get there. I think Justice Hill is a more explosive player. So maybe the fantasy points will go there, but the volume will go to Gus Edwards. He's just going to it's not going to become the Justice Hill show, in my opinion.
We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, I have him as my third guy, obviously. His upside to me is capped. He's got 18 career receptions on his 4 years in the NFL. This is year 5 for him. He's not a passing downs back. He just hasn't been that guy ever in his career. He's a 2 down back that will have some upside. Again, he got on the bad end of a stick of the goal line this week. We'll see if that changes moving forward. Justin Hill had 2 goal line carries compared to Gus Edwards, just 1. So, we'll see what that happens. But he should be the main back coming out of the gate here. He should, like you said, 10 to 12 touches on the ground pretty easily. And again, hopefully this offense improves and where allows Gus Edwards to see some pretty open holes on the ground here. But again, 20% fab, on him, 25. Yeah, 20-25 for me on terms of him. I'm not overspending on Gus Edwards because I think there's limits to his ability. Like Kerryon Williams, he's my top guy overall. But actually, you know what? We had a question from Albert in the chat here, and I didn't mention this prior to starting this, and that's my fault here. But Albert asked, do you guys like Kenny Gainwell ahead of all those guys? Now, I know he was one of your guys, John, but he did fall. Most of his ownership did fall over the 40% mark. And we're talking about under 40% mark. And I do have the higher percentage. Oh, we're going a little bit far there. Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, and Tank Bigsby, all in that 45 to 60% range. All should be probably picked up over. I'm picking them still up over all those guys there, especially Kenny Gainwell. I know if you want to kind of go through that motion there, John.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I was very high on Ken Gainwell going into the draft season because I've been burned by Rashad Penny enough times that it's just going to happen again. And then really in my mind, the only, sort of real threat was DeAndre Swift, but the team really wasn't throwing a lot of confidence at DeAndre Swift all off season. So to me, it just screamed like, hey, give me the cheapest value come draft day. And the cheapest value come draft day was Kenneth Gainwell. Now that week 1 is over, Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch and DeAndre Swift was, an afterthought. I think Kenny Gainwell is going to be, the primary back in this committee. And again, you're in a good offense. You're in the same situation as kind of Gus Edwards. You might get vultured touchdown wise if you're in the red zone by Jalen Hurts. But again, I'll take these chances on these players that are in these really high powered, prolific offenses. And so Kenneth Gainwell, another guy, absolutely. If he's out on your waiver wire, you can scoop him up, plug him in your lineup tomorrow and get points and be fine. And so at the running back position, sometimes that's just what you need. Not everyone's going to be CMC. Not everyone's going to be Bijan Robinson and have this massive ceiling. Sometimes you just need guys who can get me 18, 20 points, and then I'll get upside with my Tyreek Hills or my Jamar Chases. I'll get my upside in other places. And so I think I think Kenneth Gainwell, yeah, for sure. If he was, if he was under 40%, if he was under 40%, he'd be on the list for sure.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, he's the main guy there, I think, in Philly there. He's been there the longest. He knows the system well. again,
He can
I
do it all.
understand.
He can pass catch. He can run.
Exactly.
They love him. They love
And
him.
they used him in the important situations, which is very interesting. That's the key point. Red zone, passing down work, and that's what we want to see Kenneth Gainwell. He saw 14 carries, he saw 4 targets. That's enough for me to trust him spending half my budget on Kenny Gainwell because this is going to be a good offense. Yeah. And well, maybe DeAndre Swift sees a little bit more work. They don't owe him anything. They traded a 4th round pick for him. You know, they don't owe him anything. Yeah, we'd love to see him on the field. But if they want their guy, Kenny Gainwell, and they trust him to be the main guy, they're going to use him. So I've chosen him over all these guys above here. So,
yeah. The other thing, too, you have to think about sometimes is the position of the franchise. The Eagles aren't really in a position to develop DeAndre Swift. They're like, no, we're trying to win now. Like, we don't have time to like bring you. If you don't get the system, you don't understand what you need to do. We have other guys that can do it. And I think Kenneth Gainwell is that guy right now. Maybe right. DeAndre Swift figures it out, but for now, it's Kenneth Gainwell.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So like I said, I had Gus Edwards as 3 of myself here. You have Roschon Johnson at your 3. I have Roschon at 2 for me. Yep. I guess since I'm the high guy, I'll kind of talk about him overall. You know, it was people were saying, well, you know, he had a good week. He really did have a good week. And then people said, well, he got a garbage time touchdown. Yeah, he did get a garbage time touchdown, but he saw the work that I wanted to see out of him because I don't think anyone owns this backfield. I don't think you take Khalil Herbert off the field, even though you're losing in games. It's not like he is an essential piece to an offense. He's not an elite running back that's like, oh, we don't want to get this guy hurt. You have other guys that can perform almost at his same level, and Roschon Johnson's like that. The fact that he saw 6 targets in a game where everyone was basically healthy on the field, I kind of want to get involved in that now while I can. You know, you might have to wait a few more weeks before his role finally comes, but he had a good game in week 1. So the fact that they could do this again in week 2, week 3, very possible. So I want Roschon Johnson out there. You know, I like him a lot. He's someone I'm willing to spend. Like, again, these are all 25% fab players. So I want here. I didn't even consider him over Williams. I only have him ahead of Williams because I think Williams will see more RB1 options in the Rams offense than Johnson will early on. But at some point, Johnson's going to see work in this offense, and he's going to be heavily involved. So that's why I have him sitting at my 2. And I think there's more upside with him than taking like Gus Edwards or Justice Hill that we'll talk about in a few seconds. So.
I would agree. I like Roschon Johnson. I mean, we talked about him in the draft process as one of those guys who will his role will increase as the season goes on. So to see him get a good role week 1 is promising. It's awesome because, in my opinion, if you were drafting Roschon Johnson, you weren't really planning on having a major asset until week 4. So get a little asset early. So if he's on your waiver wire, absolutely grab him. I wouldn't be jamming him into my lineup yet. I might want to see one more week, but for sure, like, he's a rookie, he's in a good offense, and you know, I think his draft stock kind of plummeted because he was behind Bijan, and so he didn't really get much sort of, you know, public hype or you know, TV time, whatever you want to call it. So,
right.
But he's a good back, good solid back, and yeah, it was a garbage time touchdown, but he still got in the end zone, so they count for fantasy points regardless. I don't care. So I like it. I like Roschon.
Yeah. So we both have Justice Hill as our 4th guy, real quick. Again, we kind of already briefly touched on him. I don't think there's much left to say that, you know, he's the next guy in line if Gus Edwards gets hurt. You know, you mentioned, John, that he's kind of got some more electric, while, you know, Edwards has more of the pound to his game there. The thing that he saw multiple goal line and red zone opportunities, to me, it's worth picking up. I don't think it's as high as the 3 guys above. You know, I'm spending maybe 5% of my budget to get this guy on my bench to see if maybe he ends up being the guy, but I'm not overly spending, especially with Melvin Gordon joining the team. I don't know if you're feeling differently on that.
No, the Melvin Gordon thing, I think, is just a depth. I don't know if they're bringing Melvin Gordon, like, it, you know,
he's a reliable old veteran that might.
Yeah, exactly. But I heard some people on Twitter today talking about, like, the Melvin Gordon getting called up, that it's like, you know, kind of putting some water on the Gus Edwards fire. And I was like, I don't think so. I think they just need bodies because it's like, God forbid something else happens. Right. And so to my point on Justice Hill, I think Justice Hill is good. He'll have his opportunities. He certainly, you know, clearly he did this game. I just think that he is who he is as a player. He's never going to just develop into this between the tackles, like 15 carries, 5-6 targets. Like, Justice Hill is like good change of pace, get a breather for Gus, get a breather for, maybe throw a splash play in there every once in a while. So I like him, but I wouldn't go crazy on my budget. And then, we'll see again. And then in regards to, what do they look like? It's tough, right? When you lose a player mid game, you have to sort of adjust on the fly. Now that the Ravens have a whole week to plan and game plan without J.K. Dobbins, like I want to see what the snap share looks like. I mean, maybe it is 50, maybe it is 50-50. Like I don't know. I think it'll be probably heavy in Gus Edwards' favor, but if next week they come out and it's 50-50 or 60-40 Justice Hill, it's like, well, we got to change our opinion. But I don't know if that's I still think Justice is probably a 30% snap guy. He's just not huge.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'm not spending fab on him too much. I'll let someone else take that shot. So you have Sean Tucker as your fifth guy, final guy here, John. Quickly just give why.
I like Sean Tucker pre-draft, like NFL draft. When we did our scouting, we did our prospects. I liked him as a runner. I thought he was good. Medical reasons, he dropped way down in the NFL draft. But I think he's a good back, has good vision, strong, and has a role clearly. And I don't know if Rachaad White has a stranglehold over this backfield the way we think he did, or the way, we all drafted him the way he did. So I think Sean Tucker, again, another rookie who's getting his feet under him, and come week 3, week 4 could start getting more work and more roles. And if he's a free ad, like I said, I say free ad because he won't cost nearly as much fab as the rest of these guys. And by week 3, he's putting up the same fantasy points as a Gus Edwards. It's like, I wouldn't be super shocked. Like I'd be like, oh, okay. It happened. So I'm totally okay with, throwing a couple bucks at Sean Tucker, stashing him on the bench and just waiting and seeing.
I like it. All right. I went with Joshua Kelly here. To me, it's more like I want to put him on my team and see what happens in week 2 to see how involved he is. Because, they had a ton of plays in week 1. I want to see if that is something that is a normal thing that's coming to his way, or if it's like, that was a one-time thing. He's going to have 2 carries next week here. But he had 16 carries in this game and ran the ball really well. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins defense is going to be a fun one to play for running backs this year, it seems like. But he saw a lot of involvement in this game, especially in the second half. Again, second half of games, it's definitely not as what you want as first half. But Kelly is definitely worth a couple $1 ad to see if maybe he pans out to be something more than just we all thought possibly just a backup for the team. So definitely willing to add a couple other options that you could definitely add if you want to. Tajay Spears, he outsnapped Derrick Henry in this game here. Again, I don't mind overblowing on that, but it is definitely something to take notice. Jerome Ford had a ton of carries in this game, even though the Browns were way ahead in this game. You can still pick up Ty Chandler, Rico Dowlings, and Chuba Hubbard is definitely interesting. He was on he played all the third down snaps in the offense this past week here. So he's definitely someone to monitor if he's going to see somewhat of a passing down work in this offense, even though that Miles Sanders had 4 targets, but Chuba Hubbard did have all the third down work. So that was definitely interesting to see. But there's a lot of good options here at running back. Someone that I don't think any of these turn into RB1s unless you're maybe Kenneth Gainwell. But again, most of these guys are mid to low RB2s that, again, will produce for you all season, hopefully all season long. So, all right, over to the wide receivers, John. I don't know if this is what your ranking is. All right, good.
Yeah, so the only one is Nick Westbrook-Akine. I would probably drop to the bottom and then slide everyone else up. Other than that, yeah.
Then we'll talk about like that. All right. So the higher guys, Jacoby Myers, Nico Collins, both guys over the 40% mark. Yep. Definitely should be added to your teams. Again, Myers, I don't know what's going on with him, if he's even going to be available in week 2.
I would still add him. I would still add him. Even if he's concussion, it's a week or 2. I would still add him.
And Nico Collins played very well, surprisingly, in this matchup. So I wanted to see him ball out, and he balled out enough for me. All right, so we'll start with the top here. Puka, Anuka, and Van Jefferson. John, I'll let you go first quickly on them. Again, I didn't put Van Jefferson in my top list here, but you can talk about both. So
I mean, obviously, Puka had the big game. Like we all know, it's great when a rookie goes out and eclipses 100 yards in his first game. So he seems legit. Camp hype was big on him. He looks awesome. So I think he's clearly a must add and probably play going forward. Van Jefferson is another one I just want to mention. I think he's an ad. I have a feeling people will, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, people will sort of quick react to dropping him and getting rid of him. And it's like, I don't know if that's the play. I think the ball just happened to go, Puka and some other ways. Van Jefferson is still a good wide receiver. He still saw a ton of snaps. He still ran a ton of routes. And so I'm not giving up on Van Jefferson quite yet. And either one of those two guys, if they're out on your waiver wire with Cooper Kupp, on IR, older, might be slow to return after IR, risk of re-injury is high, all of that, right? Give me these two young, fairly explosive players. And so I'm totally okay. Spending a bag on both of these guys.
Right. No, Puka Nacua was definitely someone that I loved late in May and late in rookie drafts here. And then I wanted to so badly draft him in a lot of my redraft leagues. Again, it just didn't fall like that with the amount of spots I had available. But in some of the leagues where I had maybe an extra bench spot, I threw him on there, and it's worked out great. Didn't start him though, but it worked out fantastic for us in week one. Yeah, definitely. I thought about. I think I started him in one or two leagues, but overall, I mean, he should be picked up. He is in that Cooper Kupp role. Obviously, for the time being, we don't know how long Cooper Kupp will actually be out for, but you're damn well sure that he's going to be out at least 3 more weeks. That's for sure. So maybe even 5. I don't know how long that whole thing. And then you never know. Like John said, injuries recurring, slow start for him. Puka Nacua should definitely be a priority pickup here. Someone that I'm willing to spend 30% of my budget on, maybe 40, honestly, to get him on my team, because he is someone that can help you out over the next 3 weeks and potentially even longer throughout the season here, to be honest. So I'm very high on picking him up. I'll go with my number 2 here. Next here, Romeo Doubs. He's under that 40% mark still, pretty high. He might not be as available, but he should definitely be picked up in pretty much all your leagues at this point here. I mean, on a limited snap count, put up 2 touchdowns still. Again, I don't know how long Christian Watson will be out for. It might have been just a 1-week thing. We'll wait to see. But I mentioned it in the last show that Romeo Doubs, or the show before that Romeo Doubs, was building chemistry with Jordan Love. Well, we saw it on the field here. They built that chemistry, and especially in the red zone, they found each other pretty good. And Romeo Doubs should be picked up placed on benches following his week 1 performance. So I like him a lot. John, you have Rishi Rice as your number 2 guy. Tell us why.
Rishi Rice, SMU product, Kansas City. I think, look, it was not a great game for Kansas City's wide receivers. It really wasn't. But there was a small bright spot, and it was Rishi Rice. I mean, he ran 7 routes, had 7 routes, got 5 targets on 7 routes, and got a touchdown. So he's barely out there, but every time he's out there, he's getting targeted and he's getting involved. And so to me, that screams, okay, this is a rookie who we just don't trust to do the rest of the game yet, but he'll develop there because they clearly trust him to be a wide receiver. They use him in the red zone. He found a soft spot in the coverage, and Patrick Mahomes just handed him a touchdown. So that's going to happen with this team. And so I don't think, I'm not giving up on Sky Moore completely, but I mean, I can't imagine Kadarius Toney's going to have much more of a role in that offense. I can't imagine they're going to really force feed Sky Moore. And so going forward, with Travis Kelce coming back and as the season progresses, Rishi Rice could just get more and more snaps, more and more targets. And he could be the one that come week 4, week 5, we're like, oh, that's the wide receiver you want to have. And again, I try to find rookies who are getting targets early in their career because it will develop into a bigger role. It just will. And so first game in your NFL career, you have a touchdown from Patrick Mahomes and you're getting 5 targets. It's like, all right, I think that the runway is clear for him to have a bigger role over the next couple of weeks. And so I loved him, and I loved him as a prospect. And so it's nice to see when, the college production and things like that, and it just starts to click and work out, because a lot of times it doesn't. You have a lot of N'Keal Harrys of the world, and so when Rishi Rice goes out there or Corey Davis, I don't know, like pick another, right? Like smaller school, 1-year wonder kind of guy. It's like sometimes these athletes really can develop and become great pros, and sometimes they kind of don't. And so I think Rashee Rice is the next experiment in that. And so far, after 1 week, I'm excited. So I would be comfortable putting some fab in on him.
All right, I like it. We both have Allen Robinson as our third guy. Talk about why you like picking up Robinson.
So Allen Robinson, oh boy, this one could bite me in the ass to even bring up, but I think Allen Robinson had a horrific season last year, horrific. And so, do I think that Allen Robinson is as bad as he was last year? No, I don't think he's that bad. Do I think he's as good as he was back when he was with the Jaguars or Bears? No, not even close. But he is now. If all of a sudden Deontay Johnson misses a couple weeks with a hamstring injury, or he's hampered with this hamstring injury for the rest of the season or for the next couple weeks, I mean, he could see targets. He could see just like volume. And I think with Pickens drawing attention, Deontay Johnson drawing attention, Najee Harris, needing his respect by the linebackers, there could be a lot of one-on-one matchups that Allen Robinson is still a crafty veteran pro, and he could take advantage of. And so I don't think Allen Robinson's going to light the world on fire. I don't think Allen Robinson's really going to have monster games for you. But I do think Allen Robinson is like, I would rather have Allen Robinson over Kadarius Toney. You know what I'm saying? Like these are like the kind of, so you have to start making some of these decisions. Another one, Rashad Penny. Like Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch week 1. Like, why are we, you got to make decisions at some point on some of these guys and be like, all right, I can't, this is just dead weight. And I think if you wait on Allen Robinson, there'll be a week where he has a touchdown and something, and then he's going to become a crazy hot waiver wire ad. Whereas if you throw $2 at him now, you might be able to get him on your roster for nothing. And then in 2 weeks, when everyone's clamoring for him because Deontay Johnson missed time and Allen Robinson has a touchdown, everyone's going to be scrambling to their waiver wire, and you'll already have him. So
hopefully in a few weeks that Deontay Johnson will be back at that point. So,
hopefully for the Steelers, man.
Is Rashad Penny the new Trey Sherman? I think
Rashad Penny had at least a good year under his belt. Trey Sherman,
he actually had a 10 carry game in the NFL. So I don't know, Kyle, but I like it. I mean, I had him as my third guy too. What you saw out of him, he played a lot in the slot where Deontay Johnson plays a lot. I thought Calvin Austin would see that role. He should see that role potentially. We'll have to see moving forward. But Allen Robinson controlled a lot of the slot snaps in week 1. Calvin Austin could be also another pickup that we'll talk about in a second here. But Allen Robinson looked good. He had 8 targets. He led the team in targets. I want to take another opportunity to get him on my team for a really low. I mean, you throw a couple of dollars down on him. And again, if you don't get him, you don't get him. I don't think he's going to be a world beater, but he's worth putting on your team to see if maybe you have a flex option potential with him for your team here. So, and he's all available everywhere. So you should have no issue trying to go get him right now on your team. And everyone's going after Puka probably, and some of these other top guys. I think Allen Robinson could fall under the radar, and you could pick him up for cheap. So,
yep.
My fourth guy here is Rashid. I know I'm saying his name slightly wrong, but I apologize to him. The third wide receiver for the Saints. Yes. He looked good. As a third guy on the field, he had caught a touchdown in this game here. He had 6 targets in this game. Really good game overall with him. And he's definitely someone that should be picked up. I know it's hard to want to start the third receiver or have the third receiver on your team for the Saints. You're not starting him. You're picking on your team because we know what Michael Thomas happens to him. I hope he doesn't. Michael Thomas looked good. Good for him. But he looked good last year at this time as well after week 1. Rashad Rashid is the real deal. I think he can be, and he's definitely someone I'm willing to stash on my team now and put a little money down to see if he can pan out and have maybe standalone value. And if not, God forbid something happens to Michael Thomas, Shaheed is going to step up as that wide receiver too really quickly on that team there, and I think he could thrive in it. So he is my 4th wide receiver to pick up this week. John, you have, Josh Reynolds as your 4th. Quickly say why you like Josh Reynolds.
So Josh Reynolds is one that, and I think this is just going to be a usage thing. The Lions clearly like to take deep shots, and Josh Reynolds until what's his name? Why can't I think of it? Suspended.
Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams. Until Jameson Williams comes back, it looks like Josh Reynolds is going to be that guy. So, you're going to give me 4 or 5 deep shots a game with Josh Reynolds. Like, I'll take it. So these are just, again, big splash, kind of plays. I think he is right now the number 2 target. Laporta looks like he's coming on something serious, but Josh Reynolds could be the number 2 target for a Lions offense that was pretty good last year. And so I think for the time being, for a couple weeks, you need someone, again, throw a couple bucks. You might be able to get him relatively cheap on your roster. And until Jameson Williams come back, I think you have a viable flex option. So yeah, I like Josh.
Yeah, I do too. Obviously, I have him as my 5th guy. He's definitely worth a pickup because I think you can flex him. Again, his upside is, week to week, but he's got to have a couple game limit, obviously, when Jameson Williams comes back. But I think he could put up some decent numbers for you. I mean, we saw this past week here, the Seattle cannot stop anyone. So they play Seattle in week 2, the Lions. So he's definitely worth a pickup and could actually end up being a sleeper flex play for you in week 2. And John, your last one, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Do you want to mention him quickly?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was between him and Calvin Austin as my last guy, and I didn't want to have 2 Steelers on the list, and so I put Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on there because after the Steelers got absolutely demolished, I felt like it would be weird to have 2 as like waiver wire must-adds.
I respect it.
But Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, anyone who doesn't know, wide receiver for the Titans, got 7 targets. Looked to be operating kind of as the number 2 opposite DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that, the Titans are going to be a big pass heavy team, a big, anything like that. But again, I think he's another free ad that nobody saw coming or even predicted getting targets. And he looks to be the number 2 in this offense. So I'll add him and see what happens for another week or 2. And if he keeps getting, 6, 7 targets a week, then we're in business.
I like it. Again, some other players that we might not have mentioned in detail, but Zay Jones, obviously, he looks like the number 2 on the outside, seeing a lot of work and 12 personnel in the offense there. Tutu Atwell had a really good game overall. I'd love to see what Pete continues to show that. Jaden Reed had some opportunity on that Packers game there, but Christian Watson could be back. Kendrick Bourne, big game out of him for the Patriots, but again, we've seen Kendrick Bourne have 2 touchdown games from time to time. I want to see it again before it becomes consistent. Bob Woods, 5 catches, 56 yards, decent outing for him. Again, maybe if you're desperate for a bye week, but again, we're not there yet, but definitely someone to mention. And then Calvin Austin, obviously, I kind of mentioned, John mentioned him too. There's a potential, maybe a 1 or 2 week guy that you could maybe have on your team. So, all right. And last but not least, the tight ends. John, I'll let you go with your first one first. You have Cade Otton. Why Cade Otton?
Again, this is just another one that I think I went deep on tight ends. I don't know why I went so bottom of the barrel, but I picked Cade Otton because I am kind of, I liked what I saw from Tampa Bay. I liked what I saw from Baker Mayfield in that offense. And, Cade Otton, I know it was different quarterback. You had Tom Brady, but towards the end of the season, last season, he was coming on a little strong, and younger tight ends take a little bit while to develop. So you're in year 2 now. I think if he's going to see, again, just steady 4 or 5 targets a week, it's like, okay, I'll take that. Now the floor is there for him. It's not as big of a high ceiling, but sometimes with tight end, you got to pick and choose your battles. Sometimes at tight end, you just got to take consistent points and then look for upside in other areas, because we all know tight ends just don't have, unless you're Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, like you don't have massive upside at the tight end world. So sometimes it's like I'll use my tight end slot as like that's my floor guy, and it looks like Cade Otton is going to be, a couple targets, few targets a game, maybe get you 50 yards, and you hope he gets a score, and then you have a great game. But I think he's worth at least monitoring if you're kind of dealing with like that Chiga Conquo level guy. It's like, it's not bad.
As a backup.
Yeah, it's like not bad. I'll take Cade Otton, throw him on the bench just to scare the life into my starter a little.
Yes. Kyle is right, though. I just saw that Logan Thomas, I forgot to put him onto the other choices. He definitely had a pretty solid outing in week 1. So I apologize, Logan Thomas. I always continue to forget to mention the higher percentage players here. Juwan Johnson, Chigo Okonkwo, Sam Laporta, all should be priority pickups over everyone here. Obviously, why. I still believe Juwan Johnson will have better days. Chig will have better days. And Sam Laporta looked amazing.
Amazing.
In his matchup. Again, didn't have a big production stats, but 5 targets for a rookie. I'd like to see more as we go on. And that leads to my first rookie here, Luke Musgrave, led tight ends in air yards on Sunday. Again, he almost had a touchdown. If he didn't fall down on the ground, he almost had himself a touchdown. He would have had himself a really big day. Again, everyone's saying, well, no Christian Watson, but I'm not concerned about Christian Watson being on the field taken away from Luke Musgrave. If anything, it's going to help him out in the long run. And if you're streaming tight ends and there was a tight end you didn't like overall this past week, maybe you just didn't like the performance from them, give me Luke Musgrave. Honestly, I think there's potential for him to have a good rookie year. Someone that no one's talking about among the rookies because everyone's worried about the Sam Laportas and the Dalton Kincaid. Luke Musgrave could have a really, really good season here. So that's why he's my number 1 tight end pickup this week.
I absolutely love that. I love Luke Musgrave as a pickup.
Yes. You have Hayden Hurst. Our friend Kyle also said that's one of his favorites. So tell us why Hayden Hurst.
There you go, Kyle. Hayden Hurst. So I think we were really we were all trying to play the roulette wheel of, which pass catcher is going to become Bryce Young's favorite target, right? Like everyone wants, you take the upside of Jonathan Mingo. Do you take the veteran sort of presence of, a DJ Chark or Adam Thielen? It's like, listen, I think it might be Hayden Hurst. I think it might be Hayden Hurst for at least a little while. Like, again, veteran guy, pretty sure-handed, can run decent routes for a tight end. I'm not going to sit here and say Hayden Hurst is like this world beater, but, if he's going to get, again, 6, 7 targets a game, get looks in the red zone, like all this stuff, it's like, yeah, it's great. I'll take that. I'll take a consistent week in, week out. He's not going to goose me. I'll take that. So I think Hayden Hurst is going to develop. And if you believe in Bryce Young, and I do, I saw a lot of good things out of Bryce Young the other day, as they sort of roll out more in the playbook, as he gets more comfortable, as the offense sort of clicks a little bit better, I think Hayden Hurst just could be a beneficiary and just kind of ride with the tide and, see some touchdowns clearly. He had a nice one the other day. So an idiot for just tossing that ball up into the stands. But he had a touchdown. So I don't know. Maybe Bryce will be mad at him for throwing away his first NFL career ball. Maybe he won't throw it to him anymore. But other than that, I think Hayden Hurst is a fine pickup and start kind of going forward.
I like it. All right. My number 2, again, a guy I've been talking about all season, Jake Ferguson. Didn't have the greatest game, unfortunately. A couple drops, unfortunately, but he had 7 targets. And I told you, Dak Prescott loves his tight ends. And it was a really big rain game last night in New York. Ball slip, it happens, but he had 5 targets in the red zone. I keep telling people, Jake Ferguson, he might not see between the 20 targets, but he's going to see the red zone targets in this offense here. And he saw a lot in week 1. And again, if he had just clicked on a couple of them, he would have had himself a really good fantasy day overall. So he's someone I'm still trying to pick up and put on my team if I can, because I think there's still big weeks ahead from him. Just let the rain go away. So, and a few others here. Obviously, Zach Ertz had himself a pretty decent day. Hunter Henry had himself a really good day. Again, I don't know if Mark Andrews had another week, but maybe Isaiah Likely gets another shot and maybe can perform this time. And Adam Trautman had 5 catches for 50 yards. And Greg Dulcich is banged up. I forgot to put that in the notes, but he was banged up in that game here. He might be interesting as a tight end, finally getting his opportunity to shine after his 4th season in the league. So, but that's going to wrap up our waiver wire show today, guys. A ton of fun talking waivers with you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and hopefully it will be beneficial for you. Obviously, the Jets and Bills are playing tonight. We'll find out. Again, I don't really think there's anyone in that matchup that's like, oh, you got to go pick up for waivers. Dalton Kincaid's pretty high up there. I just don't think there's anyone else unless Alan Lazard maybe balls out. I don't know where his ownership is off the bat, but maybe he balls out or something like that. Maybe Tyler Conklin for tight ends if him and Rodgers has himself a pretty good combination starting there. But that's going to wrap the show up. John, is anything you want to say overall?
No, this was awesome. I think this was a great week for football. Keep an eye out. There were some rookies. Again, this curse of rookie tight ends not being able to be super helpful for fantasy. There was a few that go back and watch Sam Laporta. Go back and watch Luke Musgrave. Go back and watch it. They had some big. I can't get over Sam Laporta's game. He looked like he was a pro. Like he made
He
some
is a
pro
pro.
catches. He
He's
looked
pro-ready.
legit. He looked legit. So I think there's going to be some. I'm excited to see Dalton Kincaid tonight. Yeah, man, it's just fun to be back in the big swing of football. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we'll be back on Thursday, guys, to talk about start and sits. We're going to change the format up a little bit. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Obviously, please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Fantasy Coaches. We'd really appreciate it. We do a lot of visual things on our live shows here that you don't get to see if you're just listening, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Again, if you want to chat with
pretty
us,
faces.
yeah, exactly. Our pretty faces too. Again, if you want to chat with us, there's 2 ways to do that. Hit up our Discord. Just hit us up for a link. We'll give you guys an invite to it. Love to get more people in there and start talking fantasy, talking trades, talking start and sits, talking league invites, whatever. And if not, follow us over on Twitter or whatever you want to call it now, X, Coaches Fantasy, and we'll be here to help you guys out all season to help you guys win some championships. So thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far.